Hello, welcome back once again to Urban X-Files. My name is Keith. Today's video is about more mysteriously unsolved mysteries. The first on today's list is the very sad case of the legend that was Tupac Shakur. On September the 7th of 1996 at the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas, a well-known rapper, Tupac Shakur, was seen attending Mike Tyson in his boxing match that night. After the match, Tupac left the casino with the CEO of Death Row Records, Suge Knight. Upon the departure of the match, Tupac and his bodyguards got into a fight with Compton-based Southside Crips gang member Orlando Anderson in the lobby of the MGM. After the fight had been broken up, Tupac and Suge Knight had left in Knight's car, which was a black BMW, and Tupac's entourage following in cars behind them. They'd stopped at an intersection of Flamingo and Colville, where a white Cadillac pulled up to the passenger side of Knight's BMW and shot out of the window, hitting Tupac 4 times and grazing Suge Knight in the head with a bullet fragment. In 2014, retired Las Vegas Police Department Sergeant, or Chris Carroll even, revealed that he was the first police officer at the scene. Now, according to the officer, when he opened the car door, Tupac fell out of the car, covered in blood. And Carroll asked, "Who shot you?" And Tupac had taken a deep breath and only proclaimed epileptic words at the police officer before slipping into unconsciousness. I can confirm that these words were said to be "fuck" to the officer, as Tupac was not a grass and didn't believe in telling the officer who the shooter was. Now, Tupac was then taken to UMC and placed on life support and into a medically induced coma. On September the 13th, 1996, only 6 days after the shooting, Tupac had sadly died as a result of his injuries at the young age of 25. Las Vegas police never arrested anyone in connection with the murder. They also failed to follow up with Yaki Gaddafi, a member of Tupac's entourage, who claimed he could identify the assailant. Unfortunately, Gaddafi was murdered only 2 months after the infamous shooting before he could be interviewed, and to this day no one has been claimed a suspect and no arrests have been made. This is a very, very, very strange case, with many theories pointing that the CEO of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, was the killer. Well, he wasn't the killer, but he'd orchestrated the killing of Tupac. Now, there is so much more into the mystery of Tupac and Biggie's death. So, if any of you are watching this video and would like a story about, or a video made about the killing of Tupac and Biggie, then just please let me know in the comments and I'll happily do a video about this. I know it goes off the subjects of paranormal, ghosts and stuff like that, but this channel is not just about ghosts and paranormal, it's also about mysteries and unsolved crimes as well, which I have a huge interest in. And this is definitely a mystery that goes deeper than just shooting. The next on the case is the very strange case of a house that is now named as the Watcher House. In June of 2014, Maria and Derek Brothers and their 3 young children were getting ready to move into their new home. The home is located at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They claimed the 6-bedroom house was their dream home, and it was located a couple of blocks away from Maria's childhood home on the top of 30th safest cities in the United States. 3 days after closing the sale, before they moved into their house, a letter arrived in their new mailbox. The letter was addressed to the new owner. In big, chunky handwriting, the typed letter read as follows: "Dearest new member of 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to our neighborhood. how did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades, and it approaches its 110th birthday. I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my turn. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. The letter also mentions specifics about the Brothers family. You have children. I have seen them. The letter continued. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know the names, I will call them and draw them into me. At the bottom of the letter, the author used a cursive font sign. The Watcher. After receiving the letter, the family reached out to the previous family who'd sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. They stated that during the 23 years of living at 657 Boulevard, they had never received a letter like that, except once a few days before they were getting ready to move out of the house. The Woods family also stated that they never felt watched in the 2 decades that they lived at the house, and in fact, rarely felt the need to lock the door at night. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw the note away without much concern. Still, the 2 families had went to the police with the letter, and investigated had been opened. The police warned the families not to tell anyone about the letters, including their neighbours, who were now suspects. 2 weeks later, even though the family still had yet not moved in, they received a second letter with even more chilling specifics about the family, including the children's birth order and their nicknames. The Watcher also asked, will the children sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the 2nd floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in each room. Then I can plan better. Several weeks later, the family had put their plans on hold to move in. A 3rd letter arrived saying, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. And by the end of 2014, the case had stalled. There were no more letters received. There was no digital trail, and the mental effects were beginning to take its toll on the family. There were no fingerprints and no way to place somebody at the scene of the crime. Only 6 months after they received the letters, they decided to sell their dream home. 657 Boulevard has been sold and is currently off the market, while the Watcher's identity still remains a mystery. So far, we have not received or heard about any more letters that had been sent to the house. I don't know whether this was a case of somebody wanted to buy that house and they lost out to the sale. So was it sold to the family who put the highest bid in? And the family who lost out were pretty bitter. So they created these letters, and when the family put the house up for sale, it was snapped up like that. Was that by the family or the people who called themselves the Watchers? As of yet, we do not know, because it's not been solved. Now, next mystery in today's video is the mystery of the Circleville Letters. in 1976, residents of Circleville in Ohio began receiving threatening mail that has haunted them ever since. The letters were from Columbus but had no return address. They accused the school bus driver, Mary Gillespie, and the school superintendent of having an extramarital affair. One of the letters was even addressed to Mary's husband, Ron, that threatened his life if he didn't put a stop to the affair. In 1977, Ron died in a suspicious one-car crash that had involved gunshots. However, when the sheriff ruled out the death as an accident, other residents of Circleville began receiving letters accusing the sheriff of covering up the so-called accident. Ron's sister's husband, Paul, was convicted of writing the letters after there was an attempt to murder Mary via a booby-trapped rigged pistol. Even after he was thrown behind bars, the Circleville Letters continued throughout the 1970s and into the early 80s. In 1994, he was released and he claimed his innocence until his death in 2012. The true identity of the Circleville Letter writer remains unknown. The last story on today's video is the Sodder children disappearance. On the night before Christmas in 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia, George and Jenny Sodder were asleep with 9 of the children when a fire had started in the house around 1 a.m. that morning. George, Jeannie and the 4 children managed to escape. The remaining children, 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Martha, 9-year-old Lewis and 8-year-old Jamie, and finally 5-year-old Betty, still remained in the house. Between the 5 of them, they shared 2 bedrooms located upstairs. George broke back into the house to save the rest of his children, but the staircase had caught fire. When he went outside to retrieve his ladder, it was missing from its normal spot. Plus, both of his coal trucks, which he was going to use to stand on top of, were strangely not starting. Marion, one of the children who escaped the fire, ran into the neighbour's house to phone the fire department, but the operator didn't pick up. When another neighbour called, the operator failed to pick up the phone once again. That same neighbour actually drove down to town and found the fire chief in person, F.J. Morris, and told him about the fire. However, even though the fire station was located a small 2.5 miles away from the house, the firefighters didn't reach the Sodder home until 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire began. When they got there, the house was literally burnt to ash. Authorities sifted through the ash to try to find the remains of the missing 5 children, but nothing was found, and they were presumed dead due to the fire. Morris suggested that the fire was so hot that it literally cremated the children's bodies, including their bones. While that theory sounds reasonable, it's not entirely accurate because even when the flesh is burned away, bones are typically left behind. Additionally, there was no smell of burning flesh reported during or after the fire. The cause of the fire was deemed to be bad wiring, and the 5 missing children were issued death certificates. Soon after the fire, George and Janine began to suspect that their children were not dead, but instead kidnapped, and the fire was deliberately set as a diversion. In fact, George had the wiring checked earlier that fall by the power company, which deemed the wiring safe. And while the fire was in progress, a woman had came forward and said that she saw all of the 5 missing children peering from a passing car. Another woman who was staying at the Charleston Hotel had seen the children's photos in a newspaper and said she had seen 4 of the 5 a week after the fire. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction. She said in a statement, "I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and wouldn't allow it." From the 1950s until Janine Sodder's death in the late 1980s, the Sodder family maintained a billboard on State Route 16 with pictures of the 5 vanished children and offering a reward for any information. The last known surviving Sodder child, Sylvia, still doesn't believe her siblings had perished in the fire, and to this day, the 5 missing siblings had never been found. I've not heard that case before, which I found really interesting. Have you heard this before? I hope you enjoyed these stories. If so, smash that like button. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to watch this video right the way through. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm so grateful. Anyway, take care, and I will see you all in the next video.